I was in my kitchen in Western Kentucky when my daughters, who were junior high school kids at that point, were complaining to me that when they got old enough to work, there wouldn't be any work for them to have, and they didn't know where they would get money for cars and clothes and things. And so that was on my mind, and about that time the recipe was given to me from my grandmother's estate, and I was on the board of the Methodist Children's Homes of Kentucky, and had not done anything significantly financial for them for a while, other than just making contributions as other people do. And so those three things began to perk in my mind. My kids need a job, I've got this sauce, what am I going to do with it? And I haven't done anything for the children's home. There was a barbecue restaurant in Old Kittawa called Kittawa Sprangs Barbecue. That is now underwater, under Lake Barkley, but that was the original barbecue place, and the original recipe is what I now use for this as well. So it's back in my family. The way I got a hold of it, my grandmother left me the recipe to the original recipe when she passed away, and so I used that recipe to help the kids. We just started out by making the sauce on the stove, and if nobody bought it, we'd have lost 50 bucks. And if they did, we'd take the proceeds and buy more ketchup and mustard and stuff and keep making it, and it began to take off. The town where the barbecue restaurant was is called Kittawa. There was a Springs nearby. The restaurant was called Kittawa Sprangs Barbecue, and so it was natural, just because of my ties to Kittawa, to put Kittawa and Kittawa Springs in the name. But Kittawa Sprangs sauce is kind of flat, and Kittawa Sprangs Barbecue, that didn't roll off the tongue. And I was waiting to figure out what I was going to call this stuff, because I didn't have labels on it at first. I mean, it just, I sell it out of the trunk of my car with no labels and bottles. And somebody mentioned to me in Webster County that they like to dip grilled chicken. That they would grill chicken and then tear off a piece of it and dip it in the sauce, and they like to dip it. And so the idea of dipping sauce, which I'd never heard of before, but Kittawa Sprangs dipping sauce kind of rolls off the tongue. Another problem we had with the name was that people kept misspelling Kittawa, and they thought it was Kittawa. And so I changed the name of Kittawa to help with the pronunciation, and that hasn't always worked. And I changed Springs to Sprangs, because that's the way they say it in Western Kentucky. That's the way they say it here. So it got to be called Kittawa Sprangs Dippin' Sauce. Basically, there are a few ingredients that I have to have. I throw them into the pot. I bring them to a boil, and then turn it down, keep it at a boil. You have to stir it constantly because it's thick and it can burn. But I cook it at just below a boil for like 7 minutes, and have to keep it warm enough that when I put them in the bottles, the caps that used to be sealed when those ketchup bottles were new, they'll reseal. So it takes about 2.5 hours to make 8 bottles of sauce. I made 8 bottles at a time, sold it. The profits went back into an envelope, and I'd buy ingredients the next time I had a day off and make more sauce and sell it. And the way it took off, I just didn't have enough time to make it as fast as people wanted to buy it. So I was sitting in Moonlight Barbecue in Owensboro, and I asked to talk to the owner. And the owner came over, and I said, "Do you make all of your sauce that you use here in the restaurant? And I see it around the state. Do you make that?" And he said, No, we can't. We used to, but we don't anymore. We have it made for us." And so I asked him who did that, and he told me about his bottler in Louisville. And I contacted Brian, who operates the Southern Dreams Ministry bottling company in Louisville. And as it turns out, I was able to take my recipe to him. He multiplied it many times over, and then he was prepared to make it for me 100 gallons or more at a time for me. But we started out at 100 gallons, and in the last 3 months, the ministry has just doubled. I'd love to have a corporation who would buy it and sell it in stores, like a food chain or a Walmart or something, because if I was able to drop ship that product out of Louisville without touching it, then I'm able to sell a whole lot more sauce. The bottle is filled with love, and we're taking care of kids who don't have anybody to take care of them, and God is in the sauce. I like that story.